Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on iTunes. Also, please check out our YouTube and Patreon pages. The links are in the podcast descriptions below. On this week's Thoughtful Thursday, I want to talk about a little clip from Simon Sinek. And we're going to play that clip right now. It's short, less than 2 minutes long. And then I want to talk about it.
The reality is, I'm an idiot. And I'm not being flip about it. I don't understand very complicated things. And so I ask a lot of questions so that the person who's telling me something complicated, who's talking in terms as if I understand them,
Sure.
finance or neuroscience, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And I ask enough questions just so that I understand it. So is what you're saying this? No, that's not what I'm saying. Well, what are you? So I'll give you a perfect example. So a long time ago, I had a client. They invited me to sit in on a meeting from the consultant that they had hired. And so all the C-level executives and me. And this consultant was giving a presentation about something or other.
This is your marketing.
This is when I had my little marketing company. And all the C-level executives were sitting there nodding and taking notes on the PowerPoint that they had printed up in front of them. And I had it as well, and I didn't understand a frickin' word of it.
Yeah.
Right? I was looking around
yeah.
and so I'd raise my hand and say, I'm really, really sorry. I know I'm the only person in this room without an MBA, but this doesn't make sense. You say A plus B equals C, but based on your logic, A plus B equals D. Can you just say it again, please? I'm really sorry to slow the meeting down, everybody. And you could see the consultant getting frustrated with me and would try and explain it again. I said, I'm so sorry. And one by one, all the C-level executives said, yeah, I don't understand it either. Now, if the idiot hadn't spoken up and said, I don't understand, they all would have nodded their heads for fear of looking stupid because they didn't understand.
Yeah.
And they would have paid a lot of money for a document they didn't understand, and they would never have used it and would have sat on a shelf. And it's because I'm okay being the idiot. That's why I'm not being flip. I'm okay everybody in the room going, because I have to ask questions until I understand it. But the reality is once I can get to the point where I understand it, I can get it so simple that I understand it, and I can say it in simple terms. That means other people understand it too.
Okay, I really like this clip, and I like a lot of what Simon Sinek does. We've spoken with Stephen Chudletsky on the program before in one of our first guest interviews, but one of the people we spoke with more recently is Ron Carucci, who wrote the new book, To Be Honest. And one of the things he talks about is the idea of governance. And these are just kind of asking the right questions in the room, not just letting things go because you don't want to be the naysayer or the one to, kind of shut down somebody else. And I think this relates heavily to a lot of what's wrong in a lot of rooms when it comes to leaders. I think there's this, the idea of the silent majority. I think I've been in rooms where I didn't feel comfortable asking a question or speaking up or saying something. And because I thought I'm the only one who thinks or believes or says this or believes this way. And then I find out later by talking to people after the meeting's over that, everybody I talked to feels the exact same way that I felt. And then I end up regretting not saying something in the moment, not raising my hand and saying something. Because no one wants to feel like they're the idiot in the room, as Simon Sinek says. Now, in his particular example, it was easy for him to be okay with being the stupidest person in the room because he didn't work for the organization. He wasn't expected to know what what everybody else around the table was expected to know. And so it can be much easier for a person who's an outsider to speak up and say, hey, I don't get this. Explain this to me more. If you are an insider, if you believe that you're going to be judged for not knowing the answer to the question that you're about to ask, that can be a lot harder for you to raise your hand and speak up. And so I think this is a really profound topic because I know that in my personal history, again, there have been times when I wished I had later on, and I know that there are leaders out there listening right now who feel the exact same way, who think something should be said, but I don't want to be the one to say it. And then you find out later, oh my gosh, everybody felt this way, but no one wanted to say it. I think it's a rampant problem.
I agree. I think it's such a problem that there's actually systems and practices and breakouts that are built around this idea that people aren't speaking up or sharing their thoughts or challenging things when they know that they should. So I'll give you an example. Somebody, the other day, I was talking to somebody who brought up SWOT analysis, and I haven't done that in a really long time, but I've done it, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the whole intent of this practice is to allow people to express what they think or how they feel about whatever the strategy is in such a way that you have some balance to things that you feel good about, and then things that you maybe don't feel good about, and the things that you see as like this is a major opportunity, and then even so much like these are threats against the strategy. And so by doing that, the intent and the hope is that you're going to, get some information that may really allow this idea or this strategy to come to fruition, but in a way in which it's challenged appropriately. I think, in a lot of spaces, in a lot of places, I'm a rhymer now. It's what I do for a living. You've got teams where even when you have a good, high-performing team, where even maybe you have an environment where you have dialogue and open dialogue, the environment changes quickly when it becomes a lot more people in a room. It's just weird. It's just how that happens. It's like nobody may have an issue pulling you aside or in a small group of 2 or 3 people saying, hey, we should think about this. I don't think this is going to work. But the minute you're in a meeting or the minute that you have more people in the room or it feels more like a presentation, then it seems like a lot of times those voices will pull back, and you won't have as much debate. You won't have as much defiance that you need to have in working through certain strategies. So I absolutely believe that it's something that's an ongoing, I think just over time, a behavior of people not wanting to either push back against something or not having the confidence or the belief in like standing up and speaking up for what they think is wrong, because typically what they find out is other people feel the same way.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I want to ask you, when the last time this happened to you, when you did speak up and you thought in your mind, I think this is important to say, but I also know that I may end up looking dumb here because maybe I'm expected to know the answer to this already and I just don't. And the risk of coming off that way, the risk of being the person where people look at me and think, you should have known the answer to that already, and clearly you don't because of this question, that was worth making sure that the thing that you needed to get across was said in the room. But first, I want to give it up to a word from one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo, so when was the last time you spoke up and said something and you knew that there was absolutely a possibility that you should have known the answer, or that there was context you didn't have that you should have had, and that you may have ended up looking like the stupidest person in the room, but you thought, you know what, this is too important to not say?
It happened literally just a couple of weeks ago where I was on a virtual meeting and people were presenting, and they kept on saying the same acronym over and over again, as if we should all know it. And I had that feeling of like, I should probably already know this. And I'm trying to find it, and I'm trying to do like that thing on the side where like you're on a call, but you're also on your phone, trying to like, what does this mean? Like, what does this stand for?
Just researching it in the background.
Yeah, like I understand the context, but like this seems to be really important. I need to know exactly what this is. So I said, and like, I'm somebody who prides myself on like reading and researching and understanding and kind of knowing what's going on and reading through the details, because I'm also asked to be somebody who provides thoughts or feedback, or maybe something is wrong here, or what's the conflicting information. So when I don't know something, I'm like, man, maybe I really missed this, but I need to ask. And sure enough, I said, hey, I'm sorry, but like, can you tell me what that stands for? I was like, I may have just like overseen it, like, playing that whole like self-deprecating, probably my fault situation. But I said it, and they said, oh yeah, sorry, it means this. And I said, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I swear, within 2 minutes, I had 4 text messages from other people on the call that were like, thank you. I didn't know what they were talking about either. Literally. And I was like, oh. And so then it hit me that, in fact, the acronym had been defined one time in a document, tucked down, but like this was a normal vernacular for the team that was talking. It's just one of those situations where they use it every day. I don't know what the heck it means. I missed that on the 19th paragraph in the middle of a document. So to them, it's just normal conversation. But I needed to know what it meant to be able to make sure that I was getting the information in the correct context. And so I did that. But I think that it is what it is. And you know what? Like, they could have been like, oh, did you read the email? They could have done that. And then I'd be like, well, I guess not if I don't remember what it is, right? But that's not what happened. But I think like it happens quite often. I can even share with you in transparency, there's times when I'll bring up ridiculous ideas to something in a larger meeting with my team just to make sure somebody will be like, I don't think it's a good idea. Just because I want to hear it. Just because I want somebody to push back or be like, I don't know if that's going to work. And then I go like, okay, cool. Tell me why. Because I you could be right here. Maybe it's crazy and stupid, but tell me why. Just to start the dialogue of it being okay to push back and to try to role model that I'm fine with you telling me that I'm wrong or that this doesn't make sense as long as this is for the betterment of the strategy.
Right. I like the two different examples there because one is a situation where clearly something is the wrong way to move forward, and the other is just a basic knowledge piece, meaning the risk is different between the two different scenarios. Because on the one that you gave the example of the acronym, you weren't shouting down anybody, like you weren't telling somebody that they were wrong. You were kind of just saying, I just don't get it. I'm not informed here, and which is really similar to what Simon Sinek was saying in that video. And then having a situation where you're kind of helping your employees shoot down your ideas just to make sure they feel comfortable doing it. That kind of social engineering sometimes is necessary to make sure that you have a healthy team who is willing to do that. I will say that the fact that you got emails or text messages from people right afterwards saying, thank you, I didn't know that either. That's a little, to me, that'd be frustrating in that it's too bad that other people couldn't have asked the same question, right? That it was like, well, I'm glad I did, but wow, that's a little scary that no one else did or no one else thought you. Because that means if you hadn't, no one else would have, and you would have left there trying to figure it out. Maybe you would have texted somebody that you trusted, one person, to find the answer, and they would have known, and they would have responded back to you and told you what it was, but then the rest of the people in the room wouldn't have known the answer to that question. And I think that kind of like fear of not knowing the answer and of looking incompetent drives a lot of what our leadership decisions are, unfortunately. And I like what you said at the end there, which is where if they had said, well, didn't you read the email that we sent out? Then the answer would have been, I guess not. I guess I didn't. And because that's the right answer. I guess I didn't. I guess I didn't read the email. Like, are you saying I should have? Because if I should have, then maybe what you're saying is that the relationship you have with me is not strong enough to where I consider your emails a priority. Maybe I had too much on my plate on things that I do consider a priority, and I didn't get to your email. So there's a lot that can go into having that conversation, or at least bringing it to light. But nothing ever happens when you don't at least take that leap and ask that question, because the what comes from it, the positive that comes from it, almost always outweighs the potential negative. Now, if you are always the one asking the question and the answer is always, yeah, it's in this document, or yeah, if that happens 2 or 3 or 4 times in a row, then there's some inner reflection that probably has to be done in terms of how prepared you are for some of these things. But everybody listening right now, you have the ability to look back and think, how often has that happened? How often has it happened where I've asked a question and the answer has been, I should have known that already? And if the answer is a lot, well, yeah, of course, do some more research. But I'm guessing most people who really hesitate, they are creating this monster out of something that doesn't even exist. This monster of, I'm going to look like the incompetent person in the room, when in actuality, you might be the savior in the room of all of your peers who think, oh, thank goodness Lorenzo asked this question, because now I know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, no, and I think it's also one of those situations, to your point about balancing risk, is that sometimes you have to balance to your point, like, is this something that I should know and I don't know because I'm not prepared, or is it something that I should know and I don't know because I am prepared and I'm lost? Like, I think those are really important factors, because when you start to load up on the questions of I should already know this but I don't, then not only are you kind of wasting somebody else's time, but you're wasting everybody's time, and that can degrade quite a bit of trust and belief in your peers or your bosses or people that work for you, if it always seems like you're kind of aloof and you don't know what's going on. Like, you always have a question, and most of the time that question is already answered if you are either paying attention or if you're doing the research ahead of time. So I think those are things as well that should run through your mind in those cases, just to make sure that, again, that it's that you're not just asking questions for the sake of asking questions, because I think that happens a lot as well. And people seem to tie that to like humility or curiosity, and it's like, no, You just didn't read what you were supposed to read, and everybody knows that. And you do this quite often. So my belief is like, I'm never going to go to you as a resource for when I need something, because you probably haven't read it at all because of the questions that you've asked. And that could be, like I said, that could be tough from a career standpoint.
Right. And 1 out of 20 times the question that person asks is the one that everybody wanted to know the answer to and nobody knew. But then it becomes like, a broken clock is right twice a day,
Exactly. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.